Hey everyone, this is Zach here with a video to talk about my Players Cup 3 qualifier team. Now, I feel like we did pretty good and we might have qualified, but that is still unknown to us. I am the 400th person on the list with an English account, so it could be that there are some British players in front of me, could be some people who didn't properly register in front of me. There could be people who played with two carts and they both scored higher than me, ahead of me. So I will not know until I get an invite or the lack thereof. But we did pretty good, and I want to say I did put a lot of effort into this team. Most of this VGC 2021 playlist or team list is just things that I've tried out for the Players Cup. I want to say that these two down here are not, but these ones are kind of my playlist ones that you've seen on the channel kind of in the end of December. So if you haven't checked those out, those are team testing videos. I can have a card or a link in the description, but I tested out a bunch of things. I tried to test the dual horses. I tried to test out beat up Cobalion, still thinking that Cobalion would be a really good matchup to Glastrier, which I'm glad I didn't go with that because it just wasn't good. I tried to go with a Rotom setup with just a Specs Lele. I tried the Moltres stuff again with Glastrier in the back, and I think that this is actually a previous team, but I did look at this a little more. And then I tried Sunroom, kind of close to what we saw with Nail's Player Cup 2 team. I grabbed a lot of inspiration from that, and I think a lot of spreads, in all honesty. Yeah. So I grabbed a lot of spreads from that and tried to work with the Glastrier I already had. Tried Sandrush Dracovish, but nothing really stuck with me until I started using Spectrier. So I started out with the Pick-a-Pony, and I ended up bringing Spectrier more than I did Glastrier because people had more counters to Glastrier, and it was easier to counter because there was more setup. So I ended up moving over to this team, and this is where the team kind of starts it out. This is the team that you see in our Hope for Master Ball run. So it's got the Focus Sash Whimsicott, Life Orb Spectrier, Safety Goggles and Senior, Eviolite Dusclops, Weakness Policy, Regirock, and Citrus Berry Tapu Fini. Now this team, it did take a couple, 30 episodes to get to Master Ball, but I was running into a lot of gimmicks and I was running into a lot of crap. So I did make some changes, even before I started thinking of this as a true Players Cup team. But I always use this on Hope for Master Ball with the state of mind that this was going to be a Players Cup team. So I was always open to changes when working on it. So it was just something that I wanted to work towards and not really give up on when it came to the idea of using Spectrier, because I thought Spectrier was really good, especially when you had the speed advantage. And most of the time on some setups, you really didn't even need the speed advantage. The only time Tailwind really comes in is if you are led against a opposing Spectrier, something like Dragapult or Regieleki, and those are really the only two that you need to immediately Tailwind on. And even Regieleki, we survive most hits from Regieleki unless it's fully offensive. And then opposing Mons with max Airstream. So that way, you could say, hey, I know that you're going to max Airstream, but I'm going to Tailwind, so you need at least two of them to outspeed me. So that was really good, having the Tailwind, just the Tailwind. Fake Tears, I feel like Fake Tears is really good with this set, because if something's just on the edge of being one-shot, you can just Fake Tears it. We were able to one-shot most maxed Landos with a Max Phantasm and Fake Tears, so that was really good. And then the taunt to shut down Trick Room, because Spectrier doesn't like Trick Room. and then the Moonblast for some offensive support. For our Spectrier, we did Shadow Ball, Mudshot, and Hyper Beam, just the typical moves that you have on an offensive Spectrier. And this spread I actually got from Update VGC. I'll have a link to his Twitter in the description, but he showed me a Spectrier team because I told him that I wanted to work with it, and he always took a look at my teams. We didn't get a chance to practice battle, but hopefully we will in the future. But he sent me this spread, and this is the one that I used. So notice how it's not max speed, but there is just that tiniest bit of bulk. And when you are getting boosts with max Quake and you are slowing things down, you can really start adding up and building that bulk that you really don't have. As you can see, the defense is really low, so you do have to worry about Rillaboom with Grassy Glide when you're at like 50%. You have to worry about Incineroar if it has anything other than Snarl as its dark type move. I ran into that once or twice. And then anything foul play. Even though our attack is super low, mine is not 0. I actually think my Spectrier is 31 attack. So if I move that up, it adds a lot more. So foul play from something like Umbreon does a lot, but you don't see that very common. And then Incineroar, the move stayed the same, the spread stayed the same, and we just kind of switched it to a berry. Now, where did I get this spread from? I want to say it was just the top Picolytic spread. Dusclops is just the standard top Picolytic spread. I believe it's set up to live a max move from Moltres and not Urshifu. The Regirock is kind of built off of the Curse set, but I didn't want to have Curse. I didn't want to try to have to set this thing up for it to be viable. So I thought that Trick Room, Weakness Policy, and I don't even have anything to proc the Weakness Policy. It's just that the Regis are so hard to hit. The original trio is so hard to hit outside of its super effective moves. So either way, you either let it sit there and get its own damage and boost itself up from Body Press and Max Knuckle, or you knock and activate the Weakness Policy. So that was just very standard 252 to 252, but it didn't stay on the team. And then Tapu Fini, which is a set that I had previously. And then I also had the Trick Room option originally, so this Tapu Fini is actually really slow with only 4 speed EVs. I don't even know why I added the 4 at that point. Probably because they were just sitting there and it needed to be optimized. But this team did not give me the best results, the results I wanted. So that's where I really started working on the different versions of what I called Spooky Rock. My first thought that I tested on here was to switch out with a Assault Vest Rillaboom, because I had a really big Rillaboom weakness, and I thought that Rillaboom would be a great way to not only counter that, but to counter the problems that I was running into, like a Tapu Fini problem of opposing Tapu Finis. Really gives this team a problem, especially if it's the Calm Mind variant. And really at that point, other than the Baryon and Incineroar, nothing else changed at this point. I just tried it with the Rillaboom, and it worked well, but not as much as I liked it. Regirock really benefited from the grassy terrain. And what did I change here? I think version 2, I think I changed it up, but version 2 originally still had the safety goggles on. So I still had the safety goggles at this point. And then for the rest of it, I did my battles and my testing on cart. So as you've seen with my Hope for Master Ball playlist, there was a lot of episodes with the up and coming week towards the Players Cup 3 qualifier where I tested out the team straight on there, and I actually just had to make a copy of the previous team and send the changes onto here, because I didn't even test the team that I ran on Showdown at all, which I feel like I wouldn't have liked, because you either with setup teams, you either get your setup really easy or your setup becomes impossible. And I feel like with a team like Registeel, with a mon like Registeel, the setup would have been hard to get on Showdown, where it wasn't as hard in game. So once again, Whimsicott stays the same. Tailwind's great for anything that outspeeds Spectrier. Fake Tears is great for anything that might survive one hit. Taunt is great for Trick Room. Moonblast is offense. Shadow Ball, Mud Shot, Hyper Beam, Life Orb, Spectrier is great. You lower speed, you boost special defense, which you need, and you lower defense and hit hard with Shadow Ball. Now, one thing I did notice is with the Spectrier, like the biggest counter is opposing Spectriers. So you kind of have to play a mind game of, okay, who's got the tailwind? What are you going to do? Are you going to Shadow Ball first? Are you going to Mud Shot first? So usually in the mirror, I would tailwind and then Mud Shot just to get like a max Quake, because if you get the speed and then you get the special defensive boost, you are going to survive their hit, and then you're also going to be able to knock them out back. Shadow Ball isn't always a guarantee. A lot of people would EV to survive a Shadow Ball from opposing Spectriers, especially if it was max versus max. So getting that special defense boost first would help mitigate the damage that you would receive. Ensign hasn't changed. It just got the berry. I have a different berry in game, and that's because I had to mint the Insinuor that I have, because I just don't feel like breeding more Littens with different abilities. So I just use my one Litten I have, and then I mint it, because Sinuor can work really well with a different amount of natures. Like you can go minus speed, you can go minus special attack. So that's about it. Finny stayed the same. Nothing really changed about it. I did think about giving it a pinch berry, but I think with Finny, having that 50% berry is usually a lot better, because people tried to hit Finny really hard. So having Finny get down to that 25% range is actually not always the best situation. So I'd rather have health at the 50% mark than the 25% mark. Now, the two final changes is Galarian Moltres and Registeel. And these were literally previous sets that I threw on the team. I first put on Galarian Moltres when testing on cart. And I put Galarian Moltres on cart because Spectrier has a terrible matchup against opposing Galarian Moltres. So I did what I kind of thought with the Rillaboom, where I put that Pokemon on. What better way to counter it than the same Mon? Which isn't always the best idea, but in this situation it worked out. And when I originally had on the Galarian Moltres and the Regirock, I noticed that, hey, Incineroar and Regirock have 2 water weaknesses. Regirock and Galarian Moltres had a similar weakness, I believe. There was too many common weaknesses for me to allow Regirock to stay on the team. Plus, I wanted the weakness policy on Galarian Moltres. When I had Regirock on the team, I was running black glasses, which just isn't good enough. It's not like it helps at first, but if you're using Air Slash or something, like you want to hit as hard as you can with Galarian Moltres. So that's why people either go like Life Orb or weakness policy. I went with the weakness policy because Spectrier already had the Life Orb. And if Spectrier was getting hit with a super effective hit, it was taking a lot of damage. So Moltres was better off having that weakness policy. It's not max speed. It has a little bit of defense investment. It's not like an HP investment, a little bit of bulk. It comes from the Icy Horse team that I worked with on Hope for Master Ball. So I kind of just like threw it on there, and it worked out really well to have a Mon that was just like, okay, well, you're expecting Spectrier, so you led something like Urshifu, you led something like Galarian Moltres. Well, then I had my own Galarian Moltres, which, especially if you led Single Strike Urshifu, I immediately threatened. So that was really good to kind of make predictions on what my opponents were going to lead. And then the last one was Registeel, where I wanted Regirock because it was something that could like set up and become a really good wall. And I saw Registeel on one of the videos from Aaron Cybertron Zhang, and he was featuring a team that had Registeel, and I just really liked that Registeel would just sit there and take so much stuff. And one of the best things about it is that you don't want it to get an iron defense. You don't want it to just sit there. So it usually becomes a target, and that allows other Pokemon like Moltres, like Tapu Fini with Calm Mind, and Incineroar with Snarl and Parting Shot, to just get in and do what they need to do to set up or knock the team down, because a lot of focus went onto Registeel once it hit the field. One of my favorite things to do in the Players' Cup was, if Whimsicott went down before Max was over, even if it wasn't guaranteeing the one shot, I would Iron Defense and Max Quake with Registeel on the field, just so I would be +2 in defense and +2 and +1 in special defense, which made this thing just so hard to hit. Let's bring this down to 50. So at +1 and +2 with its defenses, it becomes really hard to knock out. I didn't max out these moves, which kind of started to get tricky against Pressure Zapdos. And then in the last video in my Player Cup run, I talk about how I talked about how Registeel was just like a presence that most people just started to target. I brought this opposing team down to their Spectrier, and I had Registeel and Incineroar, and the Spectrier started targeting Registeel with Max Quake and ignoring the Incineroar. So they just sat there and let me snarl so many times that I was able to live a Mud Shot and an Hyper Beam from their Spectrier and knock them out with Life Orb Chip and Snarl to win the last match. So I felt really good about that. But yeah, this is the team. If you want to copy the numbers down, take a look at the team. Let me know some suggestions. Let me know how you feel about the team. And let's check out this team in cart now. Okay, so as you saw, there are a couple of videos where you can see me build this team out in game. So there are, well, you can see me build out the original Hope for Master Ball team, but there are the changes that I was going to make. Here's the Rillaboom that I planned on running, and here is the Registeel that I ended up going with. And actually, as I see, this Moltres was actually from the Electivire team, because on the Icy Horse team, I was still running Sucker Punch. It was weakness policy, but I moved it over because I was testing it with the Regirock, and then I just switched the items when I went back to that. But this was so early in Series 7 that I was still running Sucker Punch over Nasty Plot, because this is my first Series 7 team, and this was my second one, and this is the Electivire team that was right before I started building for the Players' Cup. So yeah, just Whimsicott, Incineroar. Regirock didn't make it. There is the Spectrier. What is the EVs on this? Oh no, it's decent. So what is it turned out to be? It's not 0, I know that. There is the Tapu Fini. There's the Dusclops that was originally on the team while Regirock was on the team, but I switched out when I realized that I was never bringing it. I literally brought this Dusclops maybe like 3 times in Hope for Master Ball, and it just didn't work out. And then there's the Registeel. But that is the team. That's how the team evolved. We went 15-3. We lost 3 matches. One of them was to a really bad call on my hand. I made a prediction, and I totally ignored that prediction, and I was 100% correct. And so I could have avoided the play, and I took so much damage turn one. I couldn't come back from it. The first one was to a timer battle with someone I believe ended up placing 77th overall. So I don't mind losing to them because they probably didn't lose to a lot of people. And there was one more that I honestly can't remember, but we played really good. We ended up with a total of 1662 at 15-3, like I said, and I feel like I played it really well. But now what I want to know in the comments down below is, how did you do? Did you participate in the Player Cup 3 qualifier? How did you place overall? Did you do as good as me? Did you do better? Did you do worse? Let me know. What team did you bring? What kind of things did you see? What was the craziest thing you saw? I want to say the craziest thing that I saw in the Players Cup 3 qualifier was the Quagsire, in all honesty. Quagsire was like video 2. I want to say it's like the 4th or 5th match. And let's unlock this team. I think this team's still locked because... Okay, so yeah, this was my overall rating. 716 with a 1662, and there's the team. So let's go ahead and peep at the rental code. Okay. And here it is. Here is the team code if you want to try the team out yourself. If you do, let me know how you feel about it in the comments down below. And you will probably see this team for the weekend episodes of Hope for Master Ball, and then next week for the rest of the month I do plan on using someone else's team, a rental code for myself. I have to ask that person though. I should probably go ahead and ask that person. But if you made it this far in the video, I want to say thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I know that this wasn't very informal. I really didn't talk about spreads, but in all honesty, I kind of started with 4 and the 2 I switched out, and literally like the episode of Hope for Master Ball with Registeel is the day before the Players Cup. So I decided that off of like 12 battles that I was going to bring Registeel over Regirock. So it happens. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Anyways, if you did, like and subscribe. But I'm Zach, and I will see you in the next one.